Right. I'll do it a little louder. There we go. Hello, my tag is Willie. I go by Will typically around here. I play for the Varsity Smash team. I believe right now am ranked 4th in the Maryland-Virginia region. My peak just outside top 500 global, I think, but I've seen a couple models that predict me like top 300 or so. But I'm happy to be playing with the varsity team this season.
Sweet, awesome to hear. So how has team development during your time here helped the team grow as a fierce competitor?
I think a lot of it, especially with the way collegiate is formatted, that being the crew battle style, where it's 3 stocks for each person and 12 per school, as compared to the typical Smash style where it's like game by game basis, I think requires a lot of team chemistry and the ability to like rely on the people that you have around you. And in terms of team development, I think that really came into play in like the first little bit, because initially when I came, there were a couple of issues like with general like understanding some things with like general vibes we were getting. But once we got that figured out, I feel like it made competition a lot smoother and a lot more fun for everyone. Overall, I feel like it was really smooth, honestly. I'm really happy to be part of a team where I feel like we get along so well. And it really helps us, I think, in showing how we play, how much we trust each other to do what we have to, and everything of the sort.
Nice. So when did you personally realize that Shenandoah was so dominant in the collegiate Super Smash Bros. Ultimate space?
Honestly, I think the time I realized it, like, truly was during the last spring semester when I wasn't playing. Due to a couple of issues that I was having in regards to, like, my mental health and stuff, there were some things that were preventing me from playing in the spring semester of last year. And during that time, I sort of watched the rest of the team sort of compete without me. And going into that semester, I was honestly a little bit worried because we didn't have we didn't have another player at that time who we considered to be very good. And we were generally just worried it wasn't going to go very well and we were just going to sort of get stomped out. But I think watching the team in that way, being like fully separated from it and like seeing what they're still capable of doing even without me is when I think I realized that we really did work, because especially in crew battles and the format collegiate is done in, it's really not possible to win these sort of events with just like 1 or 2 good players. You really need like a strong core. And being able to see that strong core of like Kyle, Avery, and whoever else we had really managed to work even without me at that time was enough to give me all the confidence I needed, I think.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. So what is your most iconic competition-sided moment while being at Shenandoah?
Absolutely, it would have to be the Game Mason tournament we played in fall 2024. There was a lot going into it. We were playing a in-person event with a bunch of different schools, and ultimately it came down to us versus Game Mason hosts, George Mason University and their varsity team, who I have played a lot of their members personally in the past from when I've gone to local tournaments and events sometimes around there. So I was familiar with all of them. They were familiar with me, and I generally knew we were going to have a really tough match ahead of us. But after a lot of planning and like preparation, we were able to beat them in the round robin stage kind of handily, but we were aware that they were going to have something in return, and they really did, because when we got to them in the part of the bracket where it actually did matter, that being grand finals, they had a strategy that initially sort of was throwing us off guard, and we started very down, and ultimately it came down to us as a team preparing how to deal with that. In this instance, it was keeping me as an anchor, as locked into Kazuya in specific was doing so much in terms of threatening the other team in what we could do, that it was most of the time enough to just let them get washed by Kyle or Avery or anyone else, because they were just so worried about me in the back that we wouldn't really have to get to me in order for it to be a threat. The problem was George Mason in particular had a player, Lasag, who was extremely good against me in specific. His character is a very bad matchup into Kazuya, and I've known this, I've played him for like a few years at this point. I know he's like a very talented player. So because of that, they had gone into the second game fully anchoring him and using him to just sort of fully nullify me as like a threat as Kazuya specifically, because in that round robin stage I had actually like gone through most of their team on Kazuya, so they needed an answer for that and they found it very quickly. So our initial strategy of just do what we had done before was not really working. Ultimately, the way we were able to win it is I had to make like a last minute play and switch to Terry, my secondary character, co-main. He's like a little bit worse, but I still think he's very powerful. And in this instance, it ended up beating him in the second game of the series to tie it 1-1, which led to then going to game 3. This was a very weird situation, as ultimately what happened was we'd gone to game 3 thinking, okay, we have a little bit of momentum on our side, we can get this done. And then one of their players, Drew 2 on Hero, just completely wiped out our first 2 players, like very badly. We were finally able to take him out, but not after he'd taken 6 stocks, which was half of what you needed to win the whole thing on one player. So it was a dire situation. Kyle was able to put in a little bit of work against their next player, but ultimately I had to go in a situation that was 3-8, not in our favor. It was a little bit stressful, but ultimately it was the effort that my team had put in and everything else that had sort of led up to us playing on that stage on that day that made me realize this is definitely possible. I just need to be aware that this can be done. What ended up happening is I beat their second player, then their third, and then because I had beaten Lasog so badly in game 2 on the Terry, he wasn't confident enough to go in game 3 in a situation where I had that much momentum, so they had to send in a sub. And that sub, as their anchor, had so much pressure on him that it ended up winning us the entire LAN. And that's probably the hardest I've ever celebrated or popped off for a victory. Playing with a team really does do that.
Hello, I am David Hummel. I'm a freshman here at Shenandoah University, and I just started playing out for the Smash esports team. And sorry, where do I go from there again?
You want me? I can ask you questions now if you're ready.
Okay, yeah.
All right. How has team development? Oh my goodness! How has team development as a whole helped the team grow as a fierce competitor?
It's definitely gone a lot of different ways. First off, as a freshman going into this, like I didn't really know who really a lot of people were back then. But then going into it more, I started to learn how my opponents play and what we actually do and what characters we play, and then we sort of been able to get along the strategy, and now I kind of had like a strategy where we usually obviously send Kip in first or something, but we could send in different strategies depending on different characters, and it's just grown a lot better in like this team aspect of like who to send in first, and we've been utilizing that for game after game, and we've really been able to push the limits, so I'm very happy with that.
Yep. When did you guys realize that you were so dominant in the collegiate Super Smash Bros. Ultimate like scene?
Well, I knew they were dominant before I even entered the ring. I was watching their Twitch VODs and everything, and I was studying like what they were gonna do, like what characters they were playing, because I really wanted to get on the team beforehand. And I already knew that they were like a really strong team. Now, I'm not saying if we're any better with me in the ring. I think we a little bit are, but now that we have a lot more variety in our team, I think it has really helped us utilize in such many different ways. And I think going into it, especially this semester, we have really been able to push ourselves more and more, and it has shown us how strong we are as a team, and we finally get to realize that going into nationals.
I couldn't agree more. So what is your most iconic competition-sided moment while being at Shenandoah? I know it's your first year, but have you had an experience like that?
Yeah. For me, it would probably be Game Mason. I would say that going into, again, being a freshman, like going into it, I've never done anything like that before, of like going out to compete. This was our first time, literally like our first time, I think like the beginning of October, I think so, where we just went out and went to George Mason, and I got to see like all this cool stuff. I didn't even know like who our players were and everything, and for me to get that shared experience with the whole entire team, where we all got to have that big clutch moment, and us just playing alongside and getting that experience of like being live streamed, sitting down with like a crowd watching us, that type of stuff, like everyone getting hyped, me getting to represent Shenandoah for the first time outside of the like just the school. It was a lot of things, but I would say that is my most proud moment.
All right, now I have a specific question for you. I know you played high school esports, VHSL.
Yeah.
So how did high school esports help prepare you for the collegiate esports scene?
It prepared me a lot. My high school before this was Frank W. Cox High School. It was in Virginia Beach, and I transferred in to that high school my junior year, and because of that, I got to see like some games on the side setting up, and I was like, oh, what is this? And he was, and the professor there was like esports, and I'm like, oh, what's esports? So me getting introduced to that was really cool, and then me later realizing that we got to play other schools was incredible, and I was like, this is really fun, like this is really interesting. So the more competition wise I've been able to play in, the better, and I've just been able to get a really good grasp on how like playing professionally works and how practices go, and being able to work with the team, and it's been really helping me ever since going into my first year in college.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for giving us an interview. Is there anything else you would like to say?
No, that would be it.
All right, sweet. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Avery, or Igloo, and this is my third year on the Shenandoah Smash team. I'm now named the coach, captain, and varsity player for the team, so I've accepted quite a few different roles over the years, but it's been a pleasure the whole way through.
Wonderful. I'm just going to go ahead and ask you a few questions. How has team development as a whole helped the team grow as a fierce competitor?
Man, I mean, the team development is just the pinnacle of being here at Shenandoah. I mean, this team has grown so much, not only in roster development. We've had a lot of turnover on the Smash team. It's really only been, I'd say, me and Kyle that have been here the past 3 years and are still here like to this day and have progressed through that. And development is such a key to that. I mean, we are constantly doing team practices and VOD reviews and going to tournaments, making sure we're all honing our craft, making sure that we're all constantly getting better. And you have to in this league. I remember in my first semester of competition, we placed third in all of NACE. And that's not because we were as good as we were now. We were actually quite a bit worse back then. But the league has developed so much that if you don't develop at a faster pace than the league is, you're going to fall behind. So us being a developing team is the reason that we are still successful today.
Amazing to hear. And when did you guys realize that you were so dominant in collegiate Super Smash Bros?
I mean, we've been doing really well for ourselves ever since I came to this school. To be honest with you, I wasn't completely certain I was going to make the team my first year. I had been competing in Smash Bros for 4 years prior to coming to Shenandoah, but I knew there was a lot of good talent at the school. I knew it was a very prominent school in the space. But really, when I came to tryouts and I saw the talent on the team, it just made sense that we were going to do well. We had a lot of tournament seasoned players. We had a lot of really great minds for the game. And, now that I've been able to take the coaching role, I've been able to dive into these players' heads and really understand how they view the game. And now that I understand how knowledgeable they are, how great of execution they are, how dedicated they are, it makes perfect sense why we're, placing nationals every single semester. I'm competing because this team is just all around great.
Yeah, you guys look so good when we watch you guys play. So what is your most iconic competition moment while being at Shenandoah?
So there's many competition moments that I could pick from. If I had to pick one that I really enjoyed, it was definitely our CECC qualifier that we did just this year, actually. We spent 8 hours in the Shenandoah Esports Arena on a weekend playing Virginia to Texas Connection Smash Bros. And that was, I must say, a humbling experience for the Smash team. I mean, this CECC qualifier was quite rigorous. We were playing teams like Winthrop, teams like University of North Texas, teams like University of Texas at Arlington, these really top Texas teams that gave us a big run for our money. Definitely played against some of the best crew battle players I've ever seen in collegiate, and it was really just a slog to get through that day with so many crew battles, but it was awesome to see the motivation of my teammates playing against some really tough opponents.
Yeah. I just have one more question for you. So, how does your role of captain affect your spot on the team? Because you mentioned before that you are captain, coach, kind of this go-to guy. So, how does that affect your spot?
I mean, it really gives me the decision maker role, I would say, is the biggest deal. I try to lead this team in a way that's very collaborative because I have such great players on this team that know the game and know their characters and their matchup charts very well. I can ask for their opinions, and a lot of times they'll have confidence and we'll develop plans together and make sense to go into the game with this given strategy. But sometimes the team can be very indecisive, and in those times where we're all not like super confident or we need that extra push, it's my job as the captain to be like, hey, I have the confidence in you that this is where you need to slot in, and that, you know, this is your time to enter the crew battle. Because sometimes the other players, you know, they don't have that confidence, and even if, you know, I think that I can do better in a scenario, it's my job to send myself out, or if I think someone else can, I need to have the confidence to send them in. It's always a decision-making process deciding who the anchor position is going to be, especially in the early days when players like Kyle, players like Far Rhombus, like weren't really confident in the anchor position. They would play significantly more nervous in those spots. It's up to me to give them that confidence that this is where you need to be, and you are, as a player, are developed enough to handle this. And it's my job to make those decisions when the team, you know, is scatterbrained all over the place.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this very insightful interview. Any last words that you would like to say?
I just want to say #SUWin.